"I just want to see my balance," said the little black girl. Banker laughed. Till he saw the screen, the request sounded harmless when Maya Reid stepped up to the counter, her small hands gripping the edge as she said softly, "I just want to see my balance." Her voice was steady, but the room around her shifted instantly. Richard Hale raised an eyebrow, then exchanged a smirk with Sophie Grant. The kind of smirk adults wear when they believe they have already figured someone out. Sophie leaned closer with a laugh that tried to sound polite but carried a sting sharp enough to cut. She asked Maya if she was lost, or if someone's cleaning lady had sent her here by mistake. Richard joined in, acting as if a 9-year-old black girl checking a bank balance was the funniest thing he had heard all week. Maya did not flinch. She did not step back. A calm confidence held her in place, the kind that made their laughter slowly lose its rhythm. Something about her stillness suggested she was waiting for a moment they could not see coming. Their voices grew louder, and the room grew smaller. But Maya kept her eyes on the counter, as if she knew exactly why she was here and exactly what would happen next. Before this moment twists in the way that will shock you, take a second to subscribe and like the video so you do not miss the truth that is about to unfold. Maya lifted her chin slightly, and the mocking finally stopped, not because she moved, but because something in the air warned them that their mistake had already begun. Richard's amusement shifted into annoyance the longer Maya stayed planted at the counter. He tapped the desk as if trying to hurry her along, then asked why a child like her was standing there without an adult. His tone carried a forced politeness, the kind used when someone wants to insult you while pretending they are not. Maya simply repeated that she wanted to see her account balance, nothing more. Her calm response only irritated him further. Sophie stepped forward with a smile that looked warm from a distance, but froze the closer you got. She bent slightly, speaking to Maya as if she were too young to understand simple words. She insisted that banks were complicated places and that children usually belonged in school, not wandering around important offices. Maya listened quietly, her expression unchanged, as if she had heard the same lines many times before. A cashier passing by paused to observe. She whispered to another employee, pointing at Maya, as though the child's presence was a mystery that needed solving. Within seconds, 2 more staff members approached, with gentle voices wrapped in condescension. One asked if Maya was lost. Another asked if her parents worked nearby. Someone else suggested that maybe a cleaner's granddaughter had accidentally walked into the executive section. Richard laughed at that, not bothering to hide how amusing he found the idea. He asked Maya whether someone had dropped her off while mopping the halls. Sophie chuckled along, covering her mouth as if she wanted to hide how much she enjoyed the moment. The staff around them exchanged looks, already concluding that the little girl was simply out of place. Maya remained still. Her steady posture confused them. Most children would have backed away or run out in tears by now, but she stood anchored, watching them without fear. The more they belittled her, the more her silence unsettled them, though none of them understood why. She quietly spoke her grandmother's name, read. The reaction was underwhelming. Richard shrugged, unimpressed, as though the name held no relevance. Sophie pretended to search her memory, then shook her head with an exaggerated sigh. She suggested that Maya was making things up or had misunderstood something she overheard at home. No one in the room paused long enough to consider that Maya might actually know exactly what she was talking about. Instead, the adults doubled down on their assumptions. Richard questioned how a child from a background like hers could possibly be connected to anyone with influence. Sophie asked if Evelyn Reid was perhaps a retired cleaner or someone who worked in maintenance. The sting in her tone landed exactly where she intended it to. A few employees laughed softly, trying not to seem cruel but failing miserably. Maya held a tiny digital recorder in her right hand, almost hidden by her sleeve. It blinked faintly, unnoticed by everyone except the viewers who would eventually realize its significance. She didn't lift it. She didn't announce anything. She just held it, patient and composed, as if she knew that every word spoken around her would eventually matter. Richard leaned closer and told Maya she should return when she was older, when she understood how banks functioned. He insisted that the executive floor wasn't a playground. Sophie agreed, adding that this area was meant for real clients, not for children pretending to be important. Not once did Maya raise her voice or defend herself. Her quiet presence created a strange imbalance in the room, one that none of the adults recognized. While they felt superior, she seemed to be quietly watching them reveal exactly who they were. Her stillness became the sharpest contrast to their growing arrogance. Something about her composure hinted that she was waiting for the precise moment when all their assumptions would collapse in front of them. Their cruelty climbed slowly, each remark harsher than the last, yet Maya did not break. Her calm eyes never wavered. She stood there as though she knew a truth none of them were ready to hear. And in just a few moments, that truth would begin to surface. Alexandra Pierce stepped through the glass doors with her usual quiet authority. But the entire room noticed the sudden shift the moment her eyes landed on Maya. Her steps slowed, and the cold formality that employees feared instantly softened. She approached Maya with a kind of respect that no one in the room understood yet, and the shock settled over the staff like a heavy blanket. Richard Hale stiffened where he stood, recognizing her too late. His mocking confidence drained from his face as Alexandra looked from him to Sophie and then down to Maya, her expression turning sharp. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Her presence alone peeled the arrogance off the adults who had been smirking only moments before. A quiet breath left Sophie as the truth began to dawn on her. She straightened her blazer, as if doing so would erase the way she had spoken to Maya. Richard shifted uncomfortably, the color fading from his face as Alexandra crouched slightly to meet Maya at eye level, speaking her name with familiarity. That single moment told the entire room everything they were not ready to believe. The staff members exchanged looks of confusion, waiting for some explanation. Alexandra stood at her full height again, her expression stern and icy as she turned toward Richard. Her voice carried across the lobby with controlled disappointment. "Do you know who you were speaking to?" Silence followed. No one dared to answer. Maya kept standing quietly at the counter, still holding the small recorder in her hand. She did not raise it higher. She did not explain it. She just let the adults sink into their own realization while Alexandra continued. She spoke clearly so every person nearby could hear her. "This is Maya Reid, granddaughter of Evelyn Reid." The sound of that name hit the room like a thunderclap. Conversation stopped. Footsteps froze. Even the printers in the back office seemed to go silent. Richard blinked, the truth finally forcing its way into his pride. Evelyn Reid was not just a wealthy woman, she was the founder of one of the most powerful companies in the country, a corporation that quietly influenced entire markets. And Maya, the same child they humiliated moments earlier, held something no one expected: ownership. Alexandra continued without softening her tone. "Maya holds 5% of the corporation. And you treated her like someone who did not even belong in the room." The weight of her words left Richard speechless. His mouth parted slightly, but no explanation came out. Sophie swallowed as her hands began to tremble against the edge of the counter. Maya remained steady, her calm presence suddenly making perfect sense. The confidence she carried was not arrogance. It was inherited. It was learned. It belonged to a child raised by a woman who built an empire from nothing. Alexandra turned to Maya gently. "Come with me, sweetheart. We should talk somewhere private." Her voice shifted again, wrapped in warmth and respect. A conference room door opened at the end of the hall, and Alexandra guided Maya toward it, while the entire staff watched with wide eyes. The shame in the room grew thicker with every step Maya took away from the front desk. Richard stared at the floor, replaying every dismissive word he had spoken to her. Sophie's face tightened as she realized how quickly her polite cruelty had turned into something unforgettable. Neither one could escape the simple truth: the girl they treated like a burden held. There's more power in this building than both of them combined. Inside the conference room, Alexandra closed the door gently behind them, leaving the others to stand in the aftermath of their own behavior. And just like that, the balance of the story shifted. The little girl everyone tried to push aside had just become the most important person in the building. Jonathan Cole walked into the lobby with a steady pace, carrying a dark briefcase that drew every pair of eyes toward him. His presence held the kind of authority that did not need an introduction. The room shifted again, as if another door to the truth had just opened. He approached the counter where Richard and Sophie stood frozen, their earlier confidence scattered like dust. He set the briefcase down gently and unlocked it with practiced precision. Not a single person dared to speak. A quiet click sounded as he opened the lid, and several printed documents slid neatly into view. Jonathan arranged them on the counter one by one, each sheet landing with a weight louder than the actual paper. Richard forced a small, nervous laugh, trying to recover control of the situation. "There must be a misunderstanding," he muttered, attempting to glance at the documents without fully committing. Jonathan moved the stack closer to him. "No misunderstanding," Jonathan said calmly. "Everything is clear. Everything is documented." Sophie stepped back as Jonathan picked up a small digital recorder, identical to the one Maya held earlier. He placed it in front of them with respectful precision. The moment it touched the counter, Richard's face tightened. He understood instantly. Jonathan pressed play. Their own voices poured out. Every insult, every arrogant remark, every degrading assumption about Maya echoed into the lobby. Staff members shifted uncomfortably, unable to pretend they had not heard those words earlier. Richard's breathing grew heavier, and Sophie's hands clasped together in quiet panic. Jonathan paused the recording after a few seconds. The silence that followed was even louder. He lifted a folder filled with printed screenshots. "These are Sophie Grant's internal messages from last month," he stated clearly. Mocking clients, mocking coworkers, mocking standards that she claims to protect. He spread the screenshots across the counter, revealing Sophie's own hypocrisy in bold text. Sophie's chest tightened as she recognized her own words, arrogant lines she believed nobody would ever see. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "This is taken out of context." Jonathan raised his hand, shutting the attempt down without raising his tone. "Everything is in full context. Your timestamps match. Your email login matches. Your wording matches. Nothing here was altered." Sophie's eyes lost focus as the fear settled deeper. She understood the truth. She could not talk her way out of this. Jonathan opened another document, this one heavier, thicker, and sealed with the Reid Corporation emblem. Richard swallowed hard when he saw the logo. "These," Jonathan said, tapping the papers, "are records of your department's funding." He slid the pages open. 30% of your annual budget comes directly from the Reid empire. Every major expansion you present to the board is approved through Evelyn Reid's influence. Without her signature, your last promotion would not have existed. Richard's face went blank. The realization hit him in full force. Jonathan added another sheet on top, calmly, without emotion. "These emails show your direct acknowledgments of that dependence. Your praise for the Reids, your requests for favors, your promises to treat every Reid relative with respect." He let the final page land in front of Richard. "And today, you insulted Evelyn Reid's granddaughter." Richard tried to inhale slowly, but his breath collapsed halfway. He reached for the document, then pulled his hand back as if the paper itself burned. "I want to explain," he began, but Jonathan's voice cut through with firm clarity. "Do not interrupt." No shouting. No dramatic gestures. Just an authoritative statement that ended Richard's attempt before it even started. Jonathan folded his hands together. "You violated policy. You violated conduct standards. And you violated commitments you documented with your own signature." His calm tone made every word feel sharper. Richard stood there, unable to defend himself. His eyes darted to the doors, to the staff, anywhere except the evidence laid out in front of him. Sophie pressed her fingers against her temples, silently willing the nightmare to stop. The evidence covered the entire counter now: screenshots, emails, printed recordings. Every sheet was a reminder that nothing they did could be erased. Jonathan picked up the last document, the one sealed with red markings, and held it without opening it. "This final set," he said quietly, "is everything prepared for corporate legal review. I suggest you think carefully before saying another word." Tension grew thicker with every breath stolen between them. Staff members did not dare to move. The lobby felt like a room where truth had finally arrived and left no space for escape. And Richard Hale, who just an hour earlier laughed at a child, now stood trapped between his past arrogance and the consequences that had finally caught him. Jonathan's final document remained in his hand, but the damage was already spreading across the room. Richard kept staring at the papers on the counter, almost wishing they were not real. His fingers twitched as he tried to piece together a defense that did not exist. Richard finally lifted his head. This situation can be fixed, he whispered. I have supported Red Holdings for years. I have always respected your family. Maya stepped forward slowly, her calm presence shifting the whole lobby once again. She placed both hands on the counter, steady and sure. Her voice carried a quiet strength when she spoke. You respected my family only when you needed something. Richard blinked rapidly, the truth landing too close. Maya looked at Jonathan. Can I say it now? Jonathan nodded once. Alexandra folded her arms beside him, signaling full support. Maya turned back toward Richard and Sophie. I am ending every contract your company has with Reid Holdings, she said with steady clarity. All of them. Today. Richard's heart dropped visibly. You cannot, Maya. You are a child, he argued, voice shaking. You do not understand the effect this will have. You are wrong, she answered softly. I understand everything. Jonathan opened the final document and slid it across the counter. The top page showed the clause highlighted in bright ink. Richard's eyes traced the words. Termination permitted under just cause. Immediate. His face drained of color. Jonathan explained. Because you degraded a major shareholder, violated conduct expectations, and misrepresented the company's values. Maya has full authority to activate this clause. Sophie pressed her hand over her mouth as tears formed. Please, she whispered. You are just a child. You do not want to ruin our lives. Alexandra stepped forward before Maya could respond. Respect should have been given before consequences, she said firmly. Not after you realized who she was. Sophie shook her head desperately. I did not mean to hurt anyone, Jonathan. Spread out the evidence once again. Each page staring back like a mirror they could no longer avoid. The recordings do not lie, he said. The emails do not lie. Your behavior was intentional. Richard reached for the documents with trembling hands. I can apologize, he pleaded. I will fix the company culture. I will make a public statement. Just give me a chance. Jonathan closed the briefcase. The chance existed before you mocked a child who asked for her balance. The silence that followed cut deeper than any words. Maya stepped closer, her steady eyes meeting Richard's directly. You treated me like I was nothing, she said quietly. You laughed at me because you thought I had no value. You judged me before I even finished a sentence. Richard opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Maya continued, You judged me because of my age, because of how I looked, because you believed power only belongs to people like you. Her voice did not rise, yet the entire lobby leaned into her words. And now, she added, you are learning that real power does not look the way you expected. Sophie finally broke into full sobs, dropping into a chair as if her legs could no longer support her. She buried her face in her hands, whispering apologies no one could take seriously anymore. Jonathan tapped another folder. These are the contract dissolution notices, he explained. Once signed, every partnership between your company and Reid Holdings will end before the hour is over. Richard's jaw tightened so sharply it looked painful. This will destroy us, he said, voice trembling. Half of our revenue comes from your corporation. Do you understand what you are doing? Maya did not look away. Yes, she said simply. I am taking away what you used against people who could not defend themselves. Richard staggered slightly, his suit suddenly looking too heavy for him. His reputation, his career, his influence, they were all attached to those contracts. He understood now that the fall would be public, brutal, and irreversible. Alexandra added softly, Actions carry weight, Richard. You decided yours. Now, we decide ours. Maya inhaled slowly, then delivered the truth that settled over the room like a final verdict. Racism does not always shout, she said. Sometimes it hides behind polite smiles, perfect grammar, and expensive clothes. Sometimes it pretends to be harmless. But people feel it. I felt it today. Richard lowered his head. Maya finished with calm strength, and today it ends. Richard and Sophie stood in complete silence. watching everything they built slip away not because of a mistake, but because of who they chose to be when they thought no one important was watching. The crash of their downfall echoed in the quiet, and Maya Reid walked away holding the strength they never expected a child to carry. Maya stood tall, her small frame radiating a quiet strength that filled the room. Every lesson her grandmother Evelyn Reid had taught her now felt alive within her. She understood that respect was earned through courage, wisdom, and patience, and today she had shown that in full measure. Richard's phone began to ring incessantly. Each buzz and chime reminded him that the consequences of his actions were no longer private. The news of Reid Holdings' contract terminations had reached his board, his investors, and the industry. He had underestimated a child, and now he was paying the price. Maya watched calmly, knowing that every action had led to this inevitable moment. Sophie sank into the nearest chair, her hands trembling as tears streamed down her face. The weight of the day's revelations pressed on her chest, leaving her unable to speak. She realized that her excuses, her polite words, her attempts to appear innocent were meaningless against the truth that had been laid bare. The world outside would soon see it too. Jonathan Cole carefully closed his leather briefcase, the final click marking the end of the confrontation. He looked at Maya with a quiet approval, acknowledging that she had handled herself with poise far beyond her years. Every document, every recording, every carefully documented detail had served its purpose. But it was her integrity and calm that had guided the outcome. Alexandra Pierce stepped forward, offering a reassuring nod and a gentle smile. She placed a hand lightly on Maya's shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of Evelyn Reid's legacy and the young girl who now carried it forward. Maya felt a warmth from the gesture, a reminder that she was never alone, and that the lessons of her grandmother had prepared her for this moment and the many that would follow. Maya took a deep breath and let her gaze wander across the room, observing the defeated expressions of Richard and Sophie. She did not gloat. She did not revel in their ruin. Instead, she reflected quietly on the responsibility she now carried. Power was not simply about wealth or ownership. It was about justice, fairness, and using influence to protect those who could not protect themselves. Today had proven her capability, but it had also reminded her that leadership came with accountability and that every choice mattered. As she stepped toward the door, Maya felt a sense of calm resolve. She had honored her grandmother, upheld her family's legacy, reminded the world that courage and integrity could come in the smallest packages. And she knew deep in her heart that this was only the beginning of her journey. Maya paused at the doorway, her small figure silhouetted against the soft light from the bank's windows. She turned slightly, her eyes meeting Richard and Sophie's stunned faces one last time. Her voice, calm yet firm, carried the weight of all that had just unfolded. "You wanted to teach me my place," she said, each word deliberate, measured, impossible to ignore. "You thought I was just a child, unworthy, someone to mock, someone to underestimate." Her gaze swept across the room, lingering on Alexandra and Jonathan, acknowledging the quiet support they had offered. Then, her lips curved into a small, almost imperceptible smile, the same serene expression that had unnerved Richard earlier. "But my place," she continued, her tone steady and resolute, "is exactly where my grandmother always said it would be. At the top, using what I have to build a world where children like me will never be judged by the color of their skin, or by the clothes they wear, but by the content of their character." The room fell into a heavy silence. Richard and Sophie could only stare, realizing that every lesson they had attempted to teach had backfired spectacularly. Maya's presence, once dismissed, now carried authority, justice, and a vision far beyond their comprehension. With a quiet, reflective breath, Maya turned fully toward the exit. She glanced once at the digital recorder in her pocket, a reminder of the careful planning and lessons from Evelyn Reid, her grandmother. Then, as she stepped out into the sunlight streaming through the doors, she spoke softly, almost to herself. "I just wanted to see my balance." The words, simple and innocent, resonated with the truth of the entire day. A moment of ordinary intention had sparked an extraordinary chain of events, leaving justice done, pride restored, and a legacy honored. Maya walked away with calm confidence, a young girl who had not only claimed her rightful place, but had also planted the seed of change that would ripple far beyond these walls. Her story was finished, but the impact lingered a quiet, unstoppable force that would inspire anyone watching to rethink the true meaning of respect, fairness, and courage.